at the workplace. This is what we are discussing today. Now, immediately, you know, every time any subject, any webinar, any conference, any session happens, we first want tips, tools, and tricks. And we want solutions. Tell us what to do. Tell us how to do this. So I want to give you a solution right away. I'm going to start with the solution and then work backwards. So you are at peace. My solution is that for every generation, this will work. Transactional solution. You have clear-cut structure and policies, procedures in the corporates, in the companies. You operate as per rules and regulations. And be very clear that you will reward with money and perks. Everybody understands that. And then you also have a choice of employees working independently or within a strict hierarchy. So there's an option there. You keep this leadership style consistent. Now, what will happen with this? You may meet short-term goals, but it's going to hamper creativity. Also, this is a style, this is an approach that may not be acceptable to all the generations. They understand work and reward and accomplishment and impact differently. Therefore, even though there is a solution, actually there's no solution yet. It is an evolving situation. And why is it an evolving situation? Now, what has happened to the idea of work? Is it a place anymore? Work is not a place anymore. You said generational differences at the workplace. What is this workplace? Redundancy is real. Redundancy is a word that not many of us want to talk about, but there are jobs that are becoming completely irrelevant and unnecessary today. In some more years, maybe the legal profession will go that way. We still don't know what all jobs will be out of fashion soon. So corporate flexibility, this will be critical. We just heard Dr. Bustrai talk about it, corporate flexibility in adjusting, the term that we use, the word agility, in quickly adapting and accepting, acknowledging the changes that are happening around us. Now, you know, with this as a background, what kind of employees are corporates, companies looking for? They will need quick learners, they will need go-getters, and they will also need young people who do not need too much of hand-holding. All okay? Yes, there's a mic, I think, open. Now, generational differences exist. I have a different perspective on this. I do believe that we are shaped by the events and the music and the literature, the historical markers of our times. And we internalize those fears, those anxieties, those coping mechanisms. And therefore, I do believe that generations are distinct from each other. You cannot broad brush, that is for sure. But there is a generational way of thinking. Why it is important today to discuss all of this and to understand this is because the stakes have never been higher. The stakes today are really, really high. Now, why are the stakes so high? Well, we are living in a VUCA world. And what is a VUCA world? A VUCA world is one where there is volatility, there is uncertainty, there is complexity, and there are huge, huge cases of ambiguity. Now, those are the 3 books that I have authored. These cover 3 different generations. One of them is more about millennials. There's another one about my generation. That's a co-authored book. And the third one that has just been published is on Generation Z. When I say there's a VUCA world, there is an additional factor which adds to the circus. I'm calling it a circus. It is a circus. There is a mass delusion. A lot of young people today want to really make a very, very meaningful impact. They want to leave a mark. They are far more ambitious and aspirational than the earlier generations. It's not about it's not about creating wealth. It's about really making a huge difference. And in doing that, many a times they may aim too high. They may fall short and then have trouble dealing with it. My premises here are that the onus in this case of covering the generational differences is on the older generation. Second, the world today is harsher. There is anxiety about the climate. There are states that are failing. There is a trust deficit. You don't trust the most powerful nation in the world. Also, the earlier generations today are in a real danger of leaving behind a generation that is not as productive, as healthy, as much in their prime as the earlier generation was. And this is a real fear. And finally, my fourth premise is that the world is flat. Now, these are the three slippery slopes. Stress management, and you read that on the slide. Let me move on. The first one, let's take stress management. What is happening here? See, there is consumption, there is self-numbing with a lot of young people. They have stresses and they manage them in their own ways. Relationships are very different today. There is a hookup culture out there. There is a sexual revolution. There was nothing, there were no opportunities. Not that I wouldn't have gotten into it, but there was no opportunity. The competition, and all self-inflicted. These are the reasons that can sometimes put the young people in mental health abysses. Now, what you see, the person you see on the screen is my daughter. She's a lawyer. She's done her psychology as well, but she experienced difficulties. This is what I mean when I talk about the first point, which is the stress management. They are not emotionally equipped. They face far more stressors than my generation did. So how do you bridge this difference? First of all, you accept, you acknowledge, and then you act. And today it takes a village to raise the children, to raise the professionals. It's not a question of one person. And literally the entire environment, the cosmos is involved because everybody's connected. And what you do is you also step back, give them the space to make mistakes, to be failure sometimes, and learn from the mistakes, and yet continue to be an ally. Today, a mighty boss is one who can give their junior permission to be at their worst sometimes. It has happened, it can happen. Now, the second part, the expectation management. Now look at these faces on the screen. Hyper-connected, they're anxious, they have a very keen bullshit meter. They know when you're bullshitting. They're highly aware of our disdain. They know we have disdain. They're exposed to age-inappropriate content. There is overstimulation, and they're struggling with low esteem despite what you see on the surface. And this low esteem is not coming from what their parents necessarily or their bosses are telling them. This is something comparison is giving them. There's always this sense of not being enough. Against this, you have these managers, they are uninformed, they feel relevant, they are prescriptive, and they're passive aggressive in their communication sometimes. They're also micromanaging, they are confused, and they give mixed messages. You can tell by just looking at their face how much of a stress it is, this intergenerational communication. Now, how do you bridge this difference? First, you offer a narrative. None of the earlier generation has worked hard to put together a narrative. When a young person enters a company, you must have the history of the company, the culture of the company, the pride of the company, what of the company has been through, the ethos, the legacy. Convey that, share that with them, offer them a narrative. Don't just let them be. Then you get into the trenches with them. You have to get into the trenches. You can't leave them all by themselves. By getting into trenches, listen to their kind of music, try and establish connections with them, be familiar with what they're watching online. Maybe they are on Reddit. Once in a while, it's okay to create an account on Reddit. I've done that. Also be ready to defend whatever you're defending with logic and reason. That's the only thing that will work with them. Now, work-life balance, my third slippery slope. What you see on the screen is a case of a fighter aircraft. This was in 2013. That's my husband, and he retired from the Air Force. We happened to be posted at the station Barmer in Rajasthan. This MiG-21 pilot was awake the entire night. chatting with his girlfriend on WhatsApp. And the reason for the crash the next day was social media addiction. And this is something that the chief of the Air Force is saying. Now, what is going wrong here? You cannot, no, it's inexcusable to lose young potential, promising lives in this manner for this reason. Accidents happen, but they don't happen for this. So what you do about this is you inform yourself first. What are the kind of habits, sleep deprivation, for instance. We do say that they stay up the night and they work, they pull all nighters, but it affects them. It affects their health. It's cumulative fatigue sometimes. Then you anticipate. So again, like I said in the beginning, the onus is on the earlier generation, the directors, the supervisors, the managers, the CEOs to inform themselves and to anticipate, okay, now the robots are coming in. Now, how is that going to affect the lifestyle? Be ready. Don't get caught napping. You can't afford to do that today. This particular, the Air Force was caught napping in this case. And also stay relevant, which means be familiar with what the big ideas are and what's happening out there. Now, in addition to all that, we finally have Generation V. Now, Generation V is generation virtual. The world is flat. And it's becoming flatter. This generation is like, they behave like each other. They have multiple identities online. You can't tell what their age is, what their gender is, what their geography is. They're communicating with each other. And in fact, they're digital natives, all of them. They're communicators because there are no middlemen involved now. They're creating their content. They are expressing themselves. They have a deep desire to plug into the community. And they also believe in merit. That's a spelling mistake. I'm sorry. That's not belie. It's believe in merit and collaboration. Now, this generation is going to affect how we work. It's going to affect the economy. It's going to affect how the society moves forward. So we need to be cognizant of the effect of this generation. And I'd like to share this with you. This is a movie worth watching for anybody who's interested in understanding the nuances of the generation gap. Here is a reverse mentoring taking place in The Intern. Very interesting movie and a wonderful way to understand how the relations relate with each other. My final word is that we have to work to build cultures of respect and civility. You cannot shy away from the fact that there are things like office politics. There are things like, dress code. There are things like a young person saying, I'm not a morning person. I can't come to work at a certain time. So there are certain things that are awkward. There are certain things that are unacceptable. Be clear about that. And reverse mentoring, we talked about. So be ready to improvise because things are going to keep changing. They're going to change further. Bottom line, the connection, whether it is at home, whether it is at the workplace, whether it is out on the public spaces, connection is very important. So that conversation and what we are doing today is beautiful because we are creating a conversation. We are talking about this issue that we all face. This is what I